Oh, hello, Braden. How are you, my friend?
I am doing well, Chris. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm pretty excited about this episode. So we are here on Thinking About Magic, episode 5. Can you believe that? And I know we have some special guests coming on, and I know you're going to introduce them in here in a couple minutes here. But if anyone's out there watching, I just wanted to say hello to everyone, and I hope that everyone is doing good. And you know what, Braden, if I can, I would like to do a couple of announcements if that's okay, my friend.
Absolutely.
And so I can see that someone's already commenting here, and I guess who it is. I have to point it out. Hello, Chris. Hello, Braden from Jonas. Jonas, how are you, my friend? Always good to see you. But anyways, I wanted to do some announcements, and I'm gonna wait on one of them because I'm gonna wait for him to come in here, and we talked about it before, Braden. But if you are out in Southern California, I'm going to be doing some live shows. So I just wanted to point that out. I'm going to be out in Rancho Cucamonga, California. That's Southern California. If you guys are there, I'm going to be with Jonathan Molo, the man in the purple suit. He has a venue out there called Magic Meets Food. So if you guys are out there, check out my Facebook post, and you can find all the information on there. And then one last thing is, I'm going to be part of a holiday variety show, and that is going to be on December 4th. I'm going to be there one night on a Saturday, and it's going to be held by Force of Nature Productions. And it's a variety show with burlesque actors and also carolers, and then myself and a few other magicians there. But anyways, that's all I got, Braden. These are my announcements, and I know we are in for one big episode today, so I'll let you take it away, my friend.
Thank you, Chris. Well, wonderful abundance to you on those dates. And I'm feeling positive already because Jonas Kane is here, #positivity. And I think, Chris, one of your friends is here as well.
Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out. Let's see here. And Micah Cover. Hey, Chris. Love you, brother. Hey, Braden. And he also made 2 comments. If you have another magician there, he had better not say what. Okay, man. Micah, you're always full of laughs and energy. And by the way, congratulations to Micah. Let me pull something out here. Micah Cover was on Penn and Teller Fool Us the other day, season 8, episode 5. This guy blew my mind away, Braden. I got to tell you, I saw his episode. It's going to be on YouTube here soon. So, Micah, if you have a link, please put it out there so that everyone can see. And also, I seen him do his act live, and this thing was just so creative and so mind-boggling that I just had to point that out. But anyways, Micah, congratulations to you, my friend.
Yes, congratulations, Micah. I will be checking that out. And speaking of Micah and Jonas out there in Facebook land and everyone else watching, you are the 5th panelist tonight. Put in your comments, put in your questions. We will take those live on the air. Your thoughts matter at Thinking About Magic. Now, what an amazing topic we have here today. It's exploring our illusions, as we have 2 of the world's leading experts on the work of Robert Neale. Will be talking deeply about Robert's work and illusion in general. So with that, I will introduce the panelists. Our first panelist is Napoleon Ryan. Napoleon is an actor and magician from London. He moved to North America in 2010 and is now based in Los Angeles. Welcome, Napoleon.
Napoleon.
Hi, guys.
Hello. Hey, Napoleon. Our next guest is Geoff Grimes, nationally acclaimed family entertainer. He brings 50 years of performing magic and delight and joy to everyone who he engages. He's sheer fun. He's sheer charm. He's a North Texas showman. He was awarded the lifetime membership of his peers in the Dallas Magic Club, and he was a recent past president of the Fort Worth Magicians Club. In 2018, as a member of Jeff McBride's internationally acclaimed McBride Magic and Mystery School in Las Vegas, Nevada, Doc received one of its 2 inaugural Eugene Berger Legacy Awards for his contribution to magic and the greater community of magical entertainers. Please welcome Geoff Doc Grimes.
There he
Hi,
is.
folks.
Oh,
Good to see you all here.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Our final guest of the evening is Michael Smith. He's a retired pastoral and family psychotherapist. He is an educator, a lifelong magician who explores the meanings and implication of make-believe, imagination, creativity, play, wonder, and the theatrical arts for magical performances. And he is the author of the book, Make Believe, Discovering and Creating Magical Experiences. Please welcome Michael Smith.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Michael, welcome to the program. Well, we have a lot to cover here today, a lot of ground, and we're going to start with a basic question. What are the benefits of visual illusions? Michael, Geoff, Napoleon, who wants to go first?
I nominate Michael.
Whoops. Okay, repeat the question again then.
So what are the benefits of visual illusions as Robert Neale discusses them?
Okay. Well, he says that we need visual illusions. While they can be problems sometimes, we need them. For example, let me show you a visual illusion, and this is one of my real interests is optical illusions, for example. And here is one that should be familiar to most of you. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. Now, you can't help but see that there's a square there, even though our brain tells us there isn't. There really isn't a square there, but our mind plays tricks on us like that, right? Can you see that? There isn't really a square, but the way it's constructed. This is what can be fun about visual illusions, and they remind us. I think that the benefits is that remind us that things are not always as they appear. And we have to start there, that it calls into question our senses, our perceptions. And of course, visuals, our vision is one of our five senses, of course. And so
I'd like to add one thing, if I might, as you're suggesting there. These visual illusions indicate that much of our reality is determined by focus, and those
Right.
things that appear in the foreground as opposed to those that appear in the background. And the effectiveness of illusion, or the experience of these visual illusions, demonstrates this necessity for us to focus.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed, and you're right, Michael. Too, you can't not see the square.
Well, there's a bit long time discussion about the difference between the brain and the mind, and I'm not a neuroscientist, so I won't try to go there, but I do read a little bit. But you know, our brains can tell. For example, let me give you an example. I was driving just this week, and my brain was taking control of my driving. I really didn't have to think about it. You know, I was driving. A person pulled right out in front of me, and I had to slam on the brakes, swerve to avoid hitting them. And so what happened is that I had been thinking about the show, for example, and what I might say. So in my mind, I was thinking about my show, but my brain was working the car. But immediately, because of the crisis, my brain kicked back in, and I became aware of my surroundings and what was happening. And we've all had those kinds of experiences where we automatically do things, and our mind goes somewhere else, and our brain and that's where it can be fool sometimes, and it can also lead to joy and satisfaction. So yeah.
And Geoff, what is your take as you're thinking about visual illusions and what Michael said as well?
I'm sorry, are you directing?
Yes.
Whom are you
Yes. Sorry.
Well, one of the things that that Bob is so insistent upon in his opening chapter on the illusions of our senses is that what we think we see really isn't what is there. That they are productions of our mind. They're productions of what's happening in the interior here. And he brings up a couple of examples of our use of computers. You know, when we hit a little later on in the book, when you hit the delete key, it's an icon. He brings this up in a different chapter, but it's related here. When you hit the computer key for deleting, that's just an icon, and there's stuff that's going on at the molecular level of the motherboard, and that we're not aware of, and thank goodness we don't have to be aware of it. Our mind is functioning very much the same way as these icons. When we look at these what we think to be the really real from our sense perception, he demonstrates through a number of references in the first chapter there that what's happening in the mind demonstrates that the projection of our reality is very much a product of something that's happening earlier in the mind by milliseconds or something.
Right.
We think there's an immediacy to what we see as a reality, but our mind has been working on that, churning away milliseconds ahead of the perception that we think we see.
Now, Doc, Robert talks about this being we're kind of seeing into the grand optical illusion, which Bob Neale talks about so much. What I see is, so can we unpack that a little bit more about how our optics and our sight is taken for granted, and how we're living in this optical illusion just by being alive? Well,
you know, if I may, let me take that observation here about being alive is kind of a fundamental foundation for Bob Neale. Let me go to the very end of the book and quote his last line, if I may. It's with which he ends this whole discussion of very disturbing assumptions and nuances about what constitutes these four illusions that we live by. He closes by saying, we must know that such belief cannot do but never forget what it does achieve. Under some circumstances, it grants life. And to know that it is a fiction and that there is nothing else and that one believes in it openly and willingly is a glorious wonder. So relating that to our visual projections of our reality as we think we see it, behind all of that is a very disturbing assumption that our sense of the really real isn't real at all. It is piecemeal, it is fragmentary, and it is a projection of very indistinct, indiscreet, often a very limited sense experience that's being remanufactured and projected out there as our really real. But the point that he makes is that this causes us to make assumptions about what we think is real, and those we act upon and relate to each other.
So in fact, it's hard to really to pull apart the visual illusion from some of the other mechanisms, like the psychology of what's happening.
Right.
Exactly.
Wow. So we're just scratching the surface here, folks, and I want to turn it over to Napoleon for his take on this. What are the benefits of optical illusions and optical illusions or illusion in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the great things from a practical standpoint of optical illusions is that in front of an audience, if you do something that is very visually dramatic, that has a power, that maybe physically it is real, maybe it isn't real, maybe you're creating a psychological image. I think it's a great way of very immediately establishing credibility as a performer, and also getting some kind of collective response from an audience. If you turn something into something else, you know, however you do that, whether you whatever way you do, whatever way transformation you do, you get a response from the audience. And I think sometimes when you're doing something which is much more of a psychological thing or a mentalism procedure, you know, the audience will go along with you and they'll think, oh yes, okay, that person says that the number they thought of was the number that the magician revealed. But when the whole audience experiences it together, you get more of a visceral reaction. And I think also the benefits of the optical illusions, I think you get perhaps a more immediate, I wouldn't say it's necessarily more profound, but you get a more immediate visceral response from a greater number of people. I've used quite often the incredible shrinking and growing head illusion, you know, it's from Top Hat Productions. Bob Calver, I think. And that's always a great thing to do. I mean, in a way, it's not essentially magic, but the art of spinning the spiral, and then, you know, maybe you tell them that you're doing you're telling them you're hypnotizing the audience or whatever you want to patter about. But the fact that you sort of then take their focus on some object and the head gets bigger or the head gets smaller, you know, it does create this kind of excitement within the audience. And you know, I think they're there to be used by magicians to quickly create sort of some kind of dynamic that really, you know, lifts the show. You know, again, you know, mentalism, we kind of have to take a lot of stuff on trust sometimes, that the card that the person selected is the card that the one, you know, that unless the whole audience has seen the selected card or the selected color or the number or whatever it might be, sometimes we have to take things on trust. But with visual or optical illusions, you know, it's much more of a thing where I feel like the audience, it's very accessible for the audience because we're all seeing it, or we think we're all seeing it. Yeah.
I think, Napoleon, we can all benefit as magical performers, realizing the limitations of our ability to see what is really, really there, knowing that we create these mental impressions ourselves, which are only maybe little fragments of the really real, whatever that is, knowing that it heightens our sensitivity and our awareness that we bring to magical performances, bringing all the so-called tricks of the trade to creating focus and attention and misattention, if you will, misdirection, all of these things that we use as artifices to create illusions can be enhanced, I think, by Bob's understanding and discussion of optical illusions, that, in particular, the grand illusion that what we think we see is the really real.
Indeed. And we're going to break just for a second. Chris, I think we've got some folks out in the audience that have commented.
Well, absolutely. I'm going to start back. The comments are piling up, guys. So here we go. I think some of you may be familiar with Kevin Ladd. Kevin and Malia are checking in for a fun-filled evening. So hello to Kevin and Malia out there. And then, of course, Micah Cover's out there saying, yay, Napoleon. You got some fans of Napoleon there. Also, Jonas Kane says hello. Yeah. And then Jonas also says hello to Doc there and Michael.
Yeah.
And then I think Jonas was chiming in on a comment. So he mentioned Bruce Calver. If that
Bruce Calver, sorry. It just went out of my head. I had 2 hours sleep.
There you go. And then I think Jonas says here, love the growing, shrinking head illusion. In my experience, it's a bonding, uniting moment for the audience. So well said there, Jonas. Thank you very much for your comment and everyone out there. And that's all I got for now, Braden.
Thank you, Chris. And that's such a good comment because as it was perfectly said by you, Napoleon, you flipping back between visual and psychological illusions. With visual illusions, it seems that people can have that shared experience and kind of look at each other like, wait, did you see that? Wait, what? You know, and they're having this communal experience that Jonas had talked about. So I've got a rapid fire question, if we will, just to kind of tie up psychological illusions and visual illusions. Which is easier to fool, the eye or the mind? in your opinion? Michael, would you like to take that one first?
Oh, wow. It's hard for me to completely divide the two, of course, but let me use an illustration from my 35 years as a marital psychotherapist. I discovered that when I worked with couples, that what happens is that when we fall in love, often, not always, but often, we don't really fall in love with the real person. We fall in love with our image of the person.
Wow. Wow.
And that what happens is that when we say the honeymoon is over, what we're saying is that people are beginning to see the real person and not the image that they had of that person. And that often then the conflict that occurs between the couple is really related to trying to get the other person to change to be like my image of you. Do you follow that?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
And that real love develops, and what I think healthy, mature love develops, when we begin to let go of the image and come to know the person and to value and cherish the person. Now, that's a psychological dynamic that's pretty intense and pretty detailed when you really start breaking it down. But what happens is that we find ourselves attracted to people that we have this unconscious image of the ideal partner, for example. And so then what happens when we start meeting people, we unconsciously begin to go, oh, well, that person kind of matches my image. And so then eventually we go bingo, because any of us could walk into a room with a number of people and be attracted to some, and some we wouldn't be attracted to at all. There's some real powerful dynamics going on. And that is a combination of the I and the mind, Braden, to come back to you.
Michael, what you seem to be suggesting, if I may interrupt there, is that what we have working for us in our mind tricks the eye.
Yes.
That we read into what we think we see.
Yes.
Based upon the nuances and the limitations of this image we have of people, so that the eye doesn't see the full partner, the full person, the full friend, or that it is a narrowly defined image that is not the full perception. So to answer that question, then it's easier to fool the eye. Yes. Because of the preconceptions already embedded in the mind.
And when couples are dating, they enter into a mutual collusion. I will not show you my real self if you don't show me your real self.
maybe that's why we wear clothes. Is that
that's right?
Well, but all this gets back to what Bob is suggesting here about the psychological, the grand psychological illusion. And that is that our belief that I am in control. I'm in control of decisions I want to make. I'm in control of what I think I perceive.
Yeah.
He makes that division in the chapter between the I and the me, as the me is the unconsciousness that's really behind the scenes. It's, to put it in a magical metaphor, it's all the assistants behind the scene, behind the stage, before the curtain opens, that are really getting everything together that'll make the performance seem real. The I out there dancing all around as an illusionist might, entertaining as that might be, is not really what's going on. That's going to create the magical impression. So,
well, think about it for a minute, Geoff. How many people? I mean, most people bring their image of a magician when they come to a magic show. And sometimes that image is not very good.
Well,
Right?
if it was like you and me knowing our early inspiration, that image was Mark Wilson and his bow tie and his vest and his
Yeah.
tuxedo and the ever lovely and forever lovely Nani Darnell in her outfit.
But
And I know
people,
when they come to my show, that ain't what they get.
no, no. But
That's
think
why I
about
wear clothes.
yeah. Well, you know, some people think magicians are for kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
Based upon their perception of what they experienced very early on.
That's right. And so I think that this dynamic is not just related to marriage. This is what I'm trying to do is broaden it. In psychotherapeutic terms, it's called transference and countertransference. And we won't go into a lot of that, but it means that we bring some unconscious or perceptions of what another person is like, and we relate to them from those perspectives. So,
Yes, indeed. And Napoleon, what's your take on this? Is it easier to fool the eye or the mind? What are your thoughts?
Well, you know, I don't think I'm skilled enough to fool people easily with the eye. I think, you know, I work a lot with children and they burn you. They burn your, I mean, adults do too, but children really, you know, I read several books, and I've also been in the field practicing. And, you know, the book I read was basically saying children don't really listen to what you say. You know, they watch you. And so actually, sometimes you have to be more skilled. You know, if you're using skill as in sleight of hand and le jeu de main, prestidigitation, they're not really listening to what you say. Whereas adults, you know, serious professionals, lawyers and doctors, it's actually easier to psychologically, and I find it easier to psychologically convince them that I have amazing powers of mental deduction or things like that, because they're listening to what I say, and I can influence them with neurolinguistic programming, or I can just infer something, or I can pretend, I can act, I can create an atmosphere, I can create a kind of like a doubt in their mind, or doubt in my mind that they perceive as being something completely different to what I'm intending. So I would say, yeah, I would say it's harder. I think it's easier to psychologically misdirect somebody because perhaps you've got more tools at your disposal. You know, you've got the way you move, the way you talk, you've got the archetype of the magician, what people's expectation is of how you perform, of what you're doing. You've got all these things you can play with. You've got language, you've got storytelling, you've got, you know, you can suddenly stop and something, you know, just pause for a moment and people suddenly go, what's happened? What's happened? Is the magician ill? Is something happening? Is there a ghost about to appear? What's going on? You know, you can do all these kind of little things that suddenly change the psychological atmosphere in the room and the space. Whereas I think if you're doing something that's more pure sleight of hand, if you're not brilliant at it, it's much harder to pull that off, really, unless you're using something that's maybe a gimmick or maybe easier to operate. I was reading recently Magic and Showmanship by Henning Nelms, and he was talking about how, you know, generally back in the day in the 60s when he was writing, illusions are, you know, the word illusion is usually ascribed to big theatrical devices or big theatrical routines using theatrical devices. And he wanted to sort of redefine it as being an illusion as being a trick that convinces the audience that it is magic, as opposed to being just purely a trick or an effect. And I wonder if that's linked to the ease of perhaps psychological misdeception. You know, if people are invested emotionally or psychologically in a premise, if the trick has meaning to them, then I think in a way people are much more ready to go on the journey with you, and perhaps it's easier to kind of astound them or deceive them or astonish them because, you know, they're already invested in, you know, if I say to a child, like today, I was doing an event and I say, right, we're going to turn this into candy. You know, they're already on the journey with me because it has meaning to them. The idea of making candy from something else, you know, they want that. And if it was, you know, money, turning something into money for an adult, or, you know, in a way, it's already playing into sort of their desires in a way that perhaps just doing a random card trick without any particular resonance to their lives doesn't. So I think maybe psychologically it is easier to misdirect people. But then if you're fantastically skilled with sleight of hand, then maybe visually it is your thing. But I think I'm afraid I'm not in that class bracket. So I have to use the mental and psychological tricks.
Fair.
Braden, if I could jump in there real quick, I wanted to point out in the comments that Kevin Ladd here is also a PhD. He says the mind. So I wanted to point that out because, he definitely has something to contribute here.
Mhm.
The I doesn't have expectations.
Right.
And also,
Right.
I think he was chiming in with you, Napoleon, agreed children lack filters, so they just see and say what is more readily. So that I just wanted to jump in there and add Kevin Ladd's contribution.
I think that's wonderful, and I Napoleon and Kevin both have brought up something really fascinating for me, and I'd like to get the opinions of Geoff and Michael on this before we move into some other territory of spiritual illusions. But is there a conditioning that an adult audience member has gone through to rely more on the psychology, on the storytelling, on the other aspects, where maybe an adolescent has not been conditioned enough, or maybe they haven't had the experience yet where the eyes can fool them, and so they focus on that optical experience? Because when you say you're going to make it the candy turn, none of them are taking that at face value. They're looking and watching to see it happen. You've kind of primed the pump, but they're still focused on the optical aspect. So is there a conditioning that occurs? Because I love this idea of these expectations, and Bob Neale had talked about the unexpected is not perceived. And that goes back to what Michael was saying earlier about what we're expecting from partners, what we're expecting from people. It's fitting patterns, and so we miss all the other colorful, wonderful things that someone provides. And I'll just digress a minute and say that a wonderful analogy that you gave about how folks project that onto other people. Maybe there's also a part of us that projects that within ourselves. Yeah. And there's a moment where we also have a revelation where that all disappears, and we realize that self-projection doesn't quite fit at some point in our lives. But
it's called self-deception.
You really hit something with me there, Braden, because we have perceptions of ourselves, of what we're trying to do as entertainers first, and how audiences are likely to perceive, and what we think will be their reaction or perception. Well, it dictates our comfort level in being performers and stepping out there and doing it, but it also presupposes what we think their attitude or experience ought to be. I'd like to share two very opposite experiences in response to your question there. And one of them happened 3 or 4 years back, a very dark experience, but another one happened just yesterday, as a matter of fact, when I was performing at the college. We have a little magic stand out in the hallway at the college, which is our Mark Wilson Magic Club little performance stand. I go out there for about 30 minutes on Thursday afternoons before my face-to-face class and do a little performance and invite folks to join the club. And I performed a little simple effect. It was a card across routine in which I have the spectators, 2 of them, pretend that they can pick up a card that's in the other person's hand and move it over into their hand. And it always gets a shock and a surprise and this expression of just sheer delight and astonishment when it happens. And for the first time yesterday, I had a young man who was one of the 2 participants say, "Was that real?" Just the complete innocence of what we hope we'll experience at some time. I didn't sense that there were any expectations of that person brought to that routine, and the astonishment was just sheer magical. You know, the wonder of it. Was that real? For a moment, that the veil of reality was just severed and stripped away. He stepped into the dark shadows there. But the other experience, speaking of dark shadows, occurred when I was involved in some restaurant work at a popular restaurant several years back. I was in the main dining hall, moving from table to table, and these were families with children and all. One gentleman had been watching me as I performed at two adjacent tables. His wife had gone to the buffet line to get another plate of food. And he pulled me aside and said, "Sir, today is our anniversary, our 37th anniversary. When my wife comes back, would you please perform something for her?" And I said, "Well, I would be happy to do that." I always carry a special deck set up for anniversary waltz, and I had the effect of it where the two signed cards fuses into one happen as a result of her of control, so to speak. In other words, the so-called two cards were resting in his hand, and I had her rub her hand over it like this as I said the magic word and tapped it with my toothbrush, my very magic one. And what I was hoping would be charming and delightful turned into a clash of thunder and lightning. I removed her hand and turned over the card very slowly. She looked at it for a moment, and when she grasped what it was and what had just happened as she perceived it, she became very dark. And she wouldn't look at me, but she looked at her husband and she said, she didn't say honey or his name or anything else. She just looked at him, glowering at him, horrified, and said, "This is the first time in our 37 years of marriage you have ever made me do magic." And it was a fearful, frightening experience a terrifying experience that she had. So obviously what she was bringing to the experience was a worldview determined by all of the factors that I certainly wasn't anticipating that brought about a very, very disarming, disjointed, and very frustrating experience for all three of us.
Well, and that was her reality, just like the other gentleman that you had mentioned. Was this real? Well, it was as real as you perceive it, as we perceive anything, right?
Yeah.
And perception, we haven't used the cliche yet, but we'll do it now. Perception is reality. So that's incredible. Now, Geoff, could we go further? Okay, Michael, go ahead. Yes.
No.
Oh, good. Geoff, could we go into that? This
is sort of a segue into Neale's discussion of spiritual illusions.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, please expand.
Yeah, you may not want to go there yet.
You've got us on the edge. The story that you've shared is
Napoleon was going to say something.
Go ahead, Napoleon.
Yeah, I just want to on the end of that. Sorry, talking about conditioning of the audience, or how the audience is conditioning itself. I think when you find adults and adolescents, late adolescents perhaps, they've gone past the stage of magic. Younger people, younger children, magic is real. It's real to them. They live in the theta mindset where I'm an astronaut today, and they believe they are an astronaut. They really are an astronaut in their head. And then you get to the stage where they'd like it to be real. And then they get to the stage where, it's great that it's happening, but there's obviously something going on that makes the magic happen. And then it gets to the point where, it's not, magic doesn't really exist, or they think it doesn't exist, because obviously we know magic exists. Maybe it's just not what they think it is. And then of course they become adults, most people. And so I think, when you do something that kind of, they had this conditioning where they don't think magic is a thing anymore, particularly if they're what might be a rational, logical professional working in the world, in a scientific world, and they think they understand it. All this stuff doesn't impinge upon my world. I'm a rational, ordered person. I think the moment you do something that sort of blows that, it really does punch a hole in what they think they know. because they're not operating in a world where they know there's ways of shifting reality. So when you do shift reality, however you do it, and for whatever effect, it is very meaningful because it's disruptive. And I think we're in the assumption disruption business, in the same way that comedians use assumptions about society, about race, and about sexuality, and about all sorts of different topics, and then puncture them. We kind of do the same thing with with reality, or how people perceive reality in an everyday way.
Absolutely. And that's the power, right? That's the power of the illusions that we do. That's the power of being magicians, really, and what that means in the real world. We're going to segue now to Geoff, who's going to kick off our topic on spiritual illusions. And Geoff, please take it away. We're ready. We're strapped in. We're ready to go. We've got our helmets on. We're ready.
In his third discussion, the grand spiritual illusion, as he defines it, he characterizes it in this way, in a simple sentence, and it is that our belief, what we believe, is true. That's it. That's the thesis of the grand spiritual illusion. Of course, the counter to that is that it might be expressed as some of our teenagers might say, "Really? Oh, really?" But that's the sort of the nexus, the point of the convergence of his discussion of all these illusions. And let me add a little comment from Larry Haas, his publisher here, in the introduction, where he anticipates sort of the dark side of or the dark implications of this Bob's discussion of the grand spiritual illusion. I'll just read just a quick paragraph here. He says, for those of you who have met Bob Neale, you know that he is a kind and gentle man and a very thoughtful, generous scholar. But he's also something of a trickster spirit, and thus he is not so keen on our feeling comfortable, especially when, as he argues here and time again, our comfort depends upon illusions that we deny as illusions. For Bob Neale's illusions go all the way down in human life to the depths of our perceptions, to our sense of self, and certainly to our notions of God, and also reality itself. And he adds, Bob also clearly is concerned with ethics, for he argues that the desire for comfort, the hunger to embrace some illusions while denying that it is an illusion, leads people to dogmatic, intolerant, totalitarian, and even violent ways of thinking and acting towards each other. And in that regard, he introduces later in the chapter what he calls the dilemma of the four falls. Mike, you want to discuss those four falls?
Yeah, basically that's the heart of his ethics, because he basically says that the way you explain fundamentalism, regardless of what religion, is that it has gone through these four falls. That we start out with the notion, usually in the form of a story. Most religions begin with some kind of story, and we could name a lot of religions, and we could get into the story that kind of is at the heart. And then we come. So it starts with a story that's been created that tells us a truth that means something to us, and so then we move again, because then we think that it's kind of a special revelation that no one else has received. And then it moves down into, well, other people ought to believe the way I believe. And the fourth fall has to do with trying to force or make other people believe the same way I believe. and even to the point of harming them, killing them, or whatever. Look at religious wars that have taken place. It's often about these four falls, where we start with the religion that may have some real positive benefit, but then over a period of time, it becomes destructive and harmful to other people. So that's basically what he means by the four falls. That
And Mike, think of the word crusades and
yes.
the historical Judeo-Christian history of the Crusades in the 1100s and the 1200s. Just the word crusades carries about it in the Western mind a certain sense of righteousness, that we are doing this because we are right, and y'all are going to confess and believe the way we do, or you die.
Mm-hmm. And this is, look at Eugene Berger's The Inquisition piece that he does. And that's the heart of what he's trying to help us look at, is that religious intolerance. And this is becoming more and more important as we live in a more pluralistic and diverse culture now. But when Bob gets into this in his conversations with people, you can note people beginning to be a little bit uncomfortable sometimes.
Well, there are parallels in Bob's notion here, because he ends in a very dark place with this. And that is there a ground of truth? I'm using those are my words. Is there a fundamental faculty within us that recognizes truth as truth? Bob would question that quite seriously, and that's the dark side of it. Other writers coming out of the 19th century skepticism, for example, Mark Twain was a good example of it. And at the end of The Mysterious Stranger, that very, very dark story of his, when the devil has manifested itself into the community of a little Austrian village, and his four young boys have discovered who he is and what he's doing, and he has revealed to them the truth of the fate of their village, and all of that comes to pass. And when it's all done and everything is destroyed, and there are only two of them left, Satan, known as Philip the Dream, in one version of the story, confronts Theodore, the little 14-year-old boy, at the end of it all, and says, "That which I told you is true. There is no heaven, there is no hell, there is no earthly life. There is nothing but you. And what are you? You are nothing but a thought, a vagrant thought, a lonely thought, wandering forlorn amongst the empty eternities." "He vanished," said Theodore, "and I was astonished, because I realized that all that he said was true." Bob Neale, in my opinion, in reading him, doesn't deny that dark side and that sort of bottomless pit. But Mike, I would suggest that what he does to come out of that is to enter Paul Prusser's three different interpretations of reality. And it's the conflict between belief versus non-belief or disbelief is found in that middle belief. You want to talk about that? Make believe?
Yes. Because I think that basically where Bob would come down in my conversations about this is that we need to have our religious beliefs. We need to have them, but we also need to have humility with that. That it's like, this is what I believe to my core, but I could be wrong. And that if we take that stance, we can live into life, and our beliefs then can be positive. And so he straddles this continuum between belief and disbelief by saying, I'm going to live into it as if it's true, but I could be wrong. And that's where make-believe comes into play as far as his spiritual beliefs here.
And he goes so far as to say, well, he's got a wonderful little metaphor in the book called the teddy bear illusion.
Yeah.
The teddy bear, growing up, we all have teddy bears and we depend upon them. We create this myth around our teddy bear. It's part of our reality, and it's a fundamental function of our reality and of our development from our identification strictly as an extension of the mother to discovering our individuality in a very complex and sometimes frightening world. That little teddy bear that we cling to, like Charlie Brown to his blanket, or whichever character that was, it gives him security. It's our first possession. It gives us our sense of authority. We can create rules over it and make it do what we want, and it won't talk back to us. And all of these are essential. So these myths by which we live are essential to us because they help us to get on and, quite frankly, says Bob, to survive.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's where we come in as magicians. We can manipulate it for entertainment purposes, and hopefully in a good way, we can manipulate people's assumptions and people's beliefs. So illusion is essentially about belief. Hopefully, we're getting people to believe in something, and perhaps circumvent their conditioning about certain ideas in our favor in an environment that we create that helps us pull off these amazing kind of effects that somehow challenge their reality or change their perception of reality.
Absolutely, Napoleon. We play such a critical role in the unmasking or unveiling or the celebrating, really, as Bob puts it, celebrating these illusions. We're often, Napoleon, this better than anyone. You're invited to these, celebrations where we're celebrating people and we're celebrating the illusion of the moment and the illusion that with illusions. So it's
But
really,
Braden, what we often ignore as we enter into magical performance for the first time, and it may come out of something of our insecurity as performers, but it's this sense that what we need to project is that we are special and that we're unique as performers, and I can do something you can't do, and that leads us into his fourth chapter there on the grand performance illusion. And that ultimately, he says, the role of the magician is to reveal the magic in our audience, that we are all magicians. Come and play, come share with me in this middle ground of make-believe. Suspend disbelief, suspend disbelief, suspend belief, suspend disbelief, and then meet me in the middle ground here and let's play together. And if we can do that, then as magicians, we are sharing in this play world, which is exactly what adults do when they go see a movie, when they play games with each other. We're surrounded by these acts of play all the time. It's somehow when we go into the magic theater that some people get grumpy and put on their mask of skepticism. And I think the richest thing that we can do, as Bob suggests, is to break through that and say, come on, that's all right, that's okay. We can come back to that later, but step on stage with me. not as my assistant, but as a fellow magician. And let's play together.
Yeah, I think definitely Henning Nels was talking about that. It's an absence of meaning, I think, is a thing. If somebody goes and sees a play, they'll invest in the story. It might have meaning. Maybe they aren't like Hamlet, or maybe they aren't like somebody from Sex and the City, or they aren't like somebody from the latest Netflix show. But they essentially understand the humanity of the main character, and they go on the journey of the story. And so that creates, we know they're actors being filmed, having rehearsed the lines, and the shots are staged. But if it's done well enough and it has an emotional story arc and it has some kind of trajectory, we believe in the illusion that these are real characters, and we are moved emotionally and to laughter by the illusion of theatre or theatre in film or theatre in TV. And I think, the problem is sometimes if we're just performing tricks, and they're not illusion, they have no meaning for the audience, then they're a bit flat, really. They don't, we're not inviting them to play with us, but we're also not giving them something. We're not giving them something deeper than just like, I can do this, look at me, or just I can do this and you can't. It's. I mean, again, it's slightly, it's an alienating thing, really.
Exactly. No, and if I may, I want to turn it to Mike, because Mike, in his performance, takes this middle ground to play. And just the theme of The Wizard of Us. Mike, talk about The Wizard of Us.
Well, The Wizard of Us is a 45-minute show I've created that's loosely built around the Wizard of Oz story. And basically, it's the notion that we're all wizards, that I'm a magician and you're a magician. And I'm inviting the audience to make magic with me. And then I through effects and through audience participation and so on, we go on a journey that's partially my journey, but also their journey in terms of through life and working together and coming up against obstacles and all of those sorts of things that characterize the Wizard of Oz story. And so I've called it The Wizard of Us. And then in a subtitle, Our Magical Lives, basically inviting the audience to claim their own magic and have fun with it. We can all have fun with it, and also it can begin to deepen into. I get into things like gift giving and supporting one another and working together. Those are meaningful themes that I think we need to hear in our world today, and there's a hopefulness involved and if we do that, then we can all find we can think better, we can love better, we can relate better, and we can go home, which is part of what the story is about. So that's it.
I wish all of you could see Mike's 45-minute show. I'll just go out and say it. I'll put a value to it. Every second of his show is worth about $1.95 plus tax.
Well, thank you, Geoff.
And Michael, what I'm hearing from you is that you release them back into the world to go and be magicians,
right.
And that's such a wonderful thing to do, and something that we all can learn from, myself included. Now, I want to go to Chris, and we're going to hit up some of the comments that have come in.
Yep. So we got a couple comments here, guys. And Dr. Ladd, Kevin Ladd says, so is the grand illusion an illusion itself, or is it reality? I sense a logical circle. And
I want to comment on that one real quick. This is a great question, because what Bob had said is that the grand illusion really is of the spiritual illusion is what I believe is true. Now, if what you believe is really true, maybe, right? But if what you believe is not really true, then maybe not. But that's I think how Bob might approach that one.
Braden, let me respond if I may.
Yes.
Bob would say that everything we've said tonight is part of the grand illusion. It's an illusion of an illusion. And if you remember the cover of his book on This Is Not a Book, that design, so beautifully done, is an image of within an image of an image of an image of an image, and there's no end to it. It recedes further and further into the background, but it's like space. There's no end to it. So how do we live in such a condition and not go mad? And his answer is, come, let's go into the playground of make-believe and play. Let's accept it as the way it is, and that it's an illusion within an illusion within an illusion, and let's have fun.
Well said.
Well said, Doc. So I wanted to add something to this as well, because I think in our last episode, we talked about the responsibility of the magicians. And so I think this topic reinforces how our preparation to create this illusion is so important. and so that we don't break the illusion, because we are getting the cooperation of the audience to play with us, and we owe it to them to give our best and to keep the illusion for what it is and not break it through our lack of preparation. So going into our second comment here by Dr. Ladd, yes, intellectual or theological humility is critical, but can't some objective truth can still exist even if we can't know all of it. And then I'm going to keep on going here, Braden. Nick Sorensen, our friend from BuddyCast here, says hello.
Hey,
And
buddy.
also Jessica Bain out there. She's laughing at a joke, I think, that Doc had said, promoting Michael's show, saying it's worth every cent. And then Jonas said, I've read the script for Michael's show. It's amazing. And we definitely have to, give out some link or lead, Braden, so that they can follow up on that on Michael. And then our last comment is by Jonas Kane: any good art inspires thought, self-reflection, and a new perspective of the world. Wizard of Us does that. Well said, Jonas.
Well, thank you.
Powerful words today. So what we're going to do is we're going to have final thoughts, and these are going to be 15-second final thoughts for tonight. So as you, Napoleon, Geoff, and Michael prepare, and even Chris, if you have some 15-second final thoughts, we'll go to those in a second. You'll have a few seconds to prepare those as we go to the powerful questions for tonight. So the powerful questions for tonight are really focused on you. How are you celebrating illusions in your performances? Do you celebrate illusions in your performances? Do you celebrate deception in your performances? Have you thought about the difference and why and how it may impact your performance? What types of illusions are you using in your performances? Are you using a lot of visual illusions? Are you using a lot of psychological illusions? Could you change that mix? Could you add more to that? And what types of illusions could you add as you think through this? Thank you, Chris. And wow, what a wonderful evening. I'm going to wrap it up with my final thoughts, and then we'll kick it out to Napoleon to go first on this. We've learned a lot about illusions from Bob Neale and Michael and Geoff and Napoleon. And if you want to learn more about Bob Neale, you can go to neilmagic.info and look at the wonderful work that both Michael and Geoff have done in cataloging and categorizing Bob's wonderful work. You can also go to theoryandartofmagic.com and you can order the book from there, from Larry Haas. Incredible work that he's done with this book and with all of the Bob Neale material. So with that, we'll go to Napoleon.
Yeah, I think I use illusion like Tommy Cooper, the British magician. You know, the act is ramshackle and bumbling, but every so often a trick occurs to my amazement that actually goes right and is confounding. And I think that because that's how my persona is. But I think the great thing about that is because I don't appear to know how it's done, and I can't believe it actually worked in a way that is astounding for everybody. I think it creates a heightened sense of illusion of the whole thing. There's something beyond what I'm doing. It creates this effect that there's some force or there's something beyond me. And so perhaps it adds a little question mark to some of the adults perhaps who are watching, who think they know how everything's done and then suddenly realize, I don't know how that's done. I really don't know. And it puts a seed of doubt. I mean, for the audience that I'm playing for, if I was doing maybe an adult show, it'd be very different. But I think for my general audience that I usually most often perform for, that's how I'm using illusion. I'm kind of using it as a punctuating what I'm doing, rather than necessarily being the main feast of every main course.
Wow, well said, like an exclamation point. Geoff, what say you on this final thoughts?
Well, my persona at the age of 77 complements my age. I'm the wonky grandfather type where things kind of go awry. And but that vulnerability invites my audience, I think, into my arena of play, hopefully, and we all have a lot of fun and share in the surprise at the ends of the effects. Mike and I have a little presentation called "Now You See Me, Now You ... question mark," in which we bring into a presentation on perception and how magicians use misdirection to fool you. We start with an experience of visual illusions, and so we show how the magician performs effects that really begin as illusion, with, of course, what we add to that in misdirection, sleight of hand, and other things that we don't share with them.
Wow, what a wonder! I can't wait to see this presentation, Geoff. We have to get you to perform this for sure. Michael, what say you? Final thoughts?
Well, yeah, I'll pick up on that because this is a program we've developed for the psychology classes at the college, where we deal with perception and the neuroscience related to perception, and we do this. But I think the thing I get from Bob that in this particular book is things are not what they seem, and that we sometimes stop thinking too much, but we can go deeper and understand the differences, both the positive and the negative aspects of illusion, and that we can then bring that to bear in our performances.
Wow. Wow. Thank you all for being here tonight. Napoleon, Geoff, Michael, Chris, I am going to turn it over to you. I think we've got a couple comments, and I think Michael has a question for you. So what are your final thoughts?
No.
Well, first off, guys, thank you so much. It's been an education, at least for me tonight. Napoleon, Michael, Doc, I really appreciate everything, and Braden for leading the discussion. But I do have a couple comments here, so I'll go right through it. Edward Ruiz wants to say, great discussion tonight, and thank you, everyone. I can't express enough how thankful I am as well. But for my final thoughts, Braden, Micah has raised the question. I'd love to ask Chris what illusion means to him as a mime. Well, for me, thinking about everything that was discussed tonight, I think I have a lot to think about and absorb and process. But as far as my illusions, the illusions that I create in my mind and that I want people to somewhat play and perceive on stage, I think they only become real for me if I could make people feel it here, in the feeling that they have in their hearts. And then for me, that's when my illusions become real. And that is my objective goal on stage, is to make people feel it here. And that's where my final thoughts are. So thank you, Micah. And again, thank you. Braden, once again, my friend, it's been a great episode. And I'm going to allow you to close it out, my friend. So take it away, my friend.
All right. Well, I just will say, he's Chris Herren as Faust, and I'm Braden Daniels, and we encourage you to keep thinking about magic. Good night.
Good night, everyone.